Muscatine, something that you guys should know about how this show works is during that intro, that's always when we come up with the latest, greatest idea for what we should do during the show. So like Chris was rolling that out, he and I were talking, and now he's like literally already bailed to go get what we need to do to pull that off. So that's why I always look like I'm crazy. I mean, I am a little bit, but that's just what live TV is.
I'll grab all three over.
Okay. So a couple quick things. Actually, really just one big thing to top the day off with is we have, don't forget, we've got Dr. Saga's dementia series this evening. At 5:30, we'll of course be broadcasting that. You can, I assume there's still space if you want to come out to the Muscatine Community School District Admin Building. You can go on the UnityPoint site to register, and you're good. Come on, you're good. See, again, another fun part about live TV in the middle of the hospital. People are walking around doing stuff. Quick toss. Yep. So every time we're here, we find a new one of these guys. They're called Warmies. If you haven't had a chance to play with one of these, you need to come out, get one from the window box. That's what it's called, right? Yeah. I don't know. These things are awesome. And so what we've done, and you don't know this is a cool thing. So I don't know if you've ever seen one of those.
No, I haven't.
You warm them up. They like help you warm up, cuddle up. But we're giving those to guests here so you can like have something to fidget with and calm you, because this is like super nerve wracking and whatever.
Yeah.
So, but with me this morning, I've got Dr. McKinney, who is in the family practice out at North Point, which is, for those of you that are, think Maid-Rite. It's right out just past Maid-Rite.
Yeah.
Probably is the easiest way to think about it by Menards. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me this morning.
Absolutely. So it seems crazy. We're at the end of June, but it's already time to start thinking about like back to school sort of stuff. Seems like Wyatt just got home and everything else. But let's just kind of go from the beginning, if you would. For those that don't know, introduce yourself, a little bit about what you do out there, who you see, and then we'll kind of dive into the physical stuff and all that other
stuff. So I'm Dr. Matthew McKinney. I'm a family medicine physician at the UnityPoint Northport Clinic. See all ages from newborns up to geriatric populations. So here today to talk about back to school physicals specifically.
Yeah, so back to school physicals, I'll be honest, I don't normally handle that. Melissa does. And actually, now that I think about it, I don't know. I don't even know when we do them. I just take them when Melissa says, go take them. And so we take them and it's easy and away we go. But for most people, is like the back to school time sort of like where to put it on their calendar for the year?
Yeah, it's a good opportunity so it doesn't get missed, each year. Try to get in a routine of having, an annual physical. And so commonly associated with back to school is a good time to get that accomplished.
Yeah, so with the back to school, what does a physical for a kid look like?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we're probably going to check height and weight. What else kind of do you cover?
Yeah, so it's a great opportunity to sit down with your child's, provider to kind of go over a comprehensive review of their overall health. So like you mentioned, we'll look at height, weight, blood pressure, vital signs. We'll take a look at their immunization status. We'll review, pertinent family health history, and also make sure that they're meeting age-appropriate developmental milestones.
Gotcha. So I know the one thing that is always the topic of conversation before we come, at least in our household, is, am I getting a shot? And now here's the funny thing. Wyatt doesn't mind shots. He just wants to know if he's getting them. So I would assume, like if I'm a parent, I'm probably going to have a list of things that I bring with me, right? Because I try and be prepared. Any like concerns we've had, like, and just kind of like, honestly, what we do is we just kind of like dump it all out, right? And I've always found that seems to make it easier because, obviously with our daughter, who had a complex medical disorder, we found that was the best thing to do, is just like take notes. Like Wyatt for a long time was getting headaches, right? So we would just track him a little bit, not like exact down to the minute or whatever, but we would just have enough to maybe figure out if there's a pattern. And then we just kind of like dump it on the table and be like, okay, you're the doctor, here you go. Does that kind of work for you, or like how do you like to get that info from families?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to think ahead and write down anything that you can think of that you'd want to ask at the visit. It can also be helpful to, if your child's old enough, to ask them to make a list or think of any questions that they would want to ask as well.
So, okay, I'm going to go a little off the rails here. What's like the weirdest thing a kid has asked you about?
Oh,
that
goodness.
You can think of?
Hmm.
Because I'm just thinking like Wyatt would ask something weird like about clipping his toenails or something. Like, is there anything weird that like a kid's asked that you're like, oh, that's a good one?
Yeah, nothing that comes to mind off the top of my head, but sometimes they interpret, if you see a kid for like a fever, not feeling well, I've told them, like, oh, if things get worse, if they're not active or playful, I've had siblings be like, oh, we need to go out and play, and that'll make them feeling better, and things like that. But can't really think of anything off the top of my head.
That's not
but
how that works.
Yeah.
Rest is almost always a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? So you've got your list, you've made that, you're getting ready to come over. What all should a parent or family bring with them for a kid's annual physical?
Yeah, so if you're establishing care with a new clinic, any outside records that you have, or if you're transferring to a different healthcare system or you're moving from out of state, when you make the appointment, ask them about signing a release of records so that your former providers or where you've been seen could send those records for review. But otherwise, if you've been seen in that clinic before, they should have everything that they would need for it.
Well, and one thing that's actually really cool with like the MyChart system is, a lot of the big providers in this area use Epic. And so like you can actually, and I actually had to do this just a couple weeks ago myself. Like I was seeing a new provider for something and it's like, oh, medical records. And I'm like, and they're like, do you want to pull this from another MyChart provider? Because I've got MyChart and you can switch between them. And you literally like push a button and like they have access to all your medical records. It's the smoothest thing in the world. So if you don't have MyChart set up, you're crazy. Like take a minute, set up MyChart, get it downloaded, go through it's a little bit of a thing because they got to make sure who you are and all that other stuff. But once you get MyChart established, oh my goodness, your healthcare life gets so much easier. So is there anything that you would recommend to a parent on how to like prepare their child for coming in? Because I'm sure different ages, it's a totally different experience for them.
Yeah, a lot of it's dependent on the age, and where they're at as far as their vaccination schedule. If they're due for vaccinations, that can be something that can be fear-provoking for children. And so in that case, maybe having a conversation closer to the time of the appointment so that the child's not worrying about it or fearing the appointment. Yeah,
it's actually funny. Oftentimes, I'm sure Wyatt is going to hate this 20 years from now, but tough luck, kid. The one thing that we found is like exactly that. Like dentists, for a while, like he was really sensitive. So like he would get so anxious about it and so worried. We wouldn't tell him until like the morning of, and then he would start asking. He said, "It's been 6 months," but he would worry about it. He would stress about it, and so we would just like chill, calm. You know what I mean? Like. And like there was one time Melissa accidentally mentioned it the night before, and we went right down that thing again. And it seems weird to be like, you would think instinctively like, oh, I should tell him early, right? Help him prepare. But like, this is the exact opposite almost, right? And of course, kid by kid, right?
Yeah.
Like if your kid can handle it and they're better, you know your kid best. And that's one thing that I've always found has been really a great change in how the medical field and the whole industry kind of looks at parents as partners. Because like when we talked about like patient family centered care, you guys are the experts on all the medical stuff. You're kind of the expert on your own kid, right? And that's not to say that you're always right. Okay, like I've had that, but you can notice things that are unusual, right? You're the expert on how they act on a normal day, or is something unusual? Is there something off? And those are the things that I've found help physicians narrow down what's going on. Just because you have that extra insight, because you don't see them every day.
Absolutely.
Like, is this normal? Nope, that's not. Or, yep, that's normal.
Yeah.
So one thing, of course, Wyatt plays sports. Is there a difference between like a sports physical, a back to school physical? what do you even need anymore? Like, are those still a thing?
Yeah. So great question. Kind of to go back to what you're talking about there with, knowing your child more. That's an advantage of having a back-to-school physical every year. It's an opportunity to build a relationship with the provider, and they become familiar with your child, and so they have a baseline to compare to. If something comes up down the road, some type of new medical concern, they can say, oh, this is a clear change from when I saw them last year
Yep,
versus
exactly.
this year versus coming in, first time to meet someone saying, hey, this new issue's happening, and then that provider not having, context or background, to go off of.
So, and this is maybe just a vocabulary thing. I know, obviously when White was young, he had well checks. I mean, is this kind of like the continuation of a well check? Like, it's not like physical plus a well check, right?
Pretty similar, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, a well check is just an all-encompassing exam, and so, like I said, back to school physical is kind of an opportunity to do that well exam and make sure they're getting in for their routine care.
Gotcha. So then, does something different need to be done for sports?
Yeah, so good question. So a sports physical is obviously focusing on participation in sport and emphasizing injury prevention. So trying to identify any pre-existing conditions or family health history that would maybe put an athlete at a higher risk of an injury per specific sport. Whereas a back-to-school physical is more all-encompassing.
So is that something, and this is me talking from ignorance here, which I do really well. It's just like my thing. So do you have to have a sports physical to play sports?
So most
in school now?
most schools require that.
Right. Okay, that would make sense. And
and-
that's probably like when you get to middle school, high school, playing school
Yeah.
sports.
Yeah.
Versus, because like Wyatt's at, going into sixth grade, so he plays like travel ball and stuff, which they don't have to, or if they do, I don't know we did it. So assuming they don't, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we're just going to find out. We're going to have a phone call. Hey, Wyatt needs to get no. So that's going to be like your middle school age and up. So how does that? That's always an interesting age, that middle school and up, because kids are starting to get their own autonomy, and they're kind of taking care of themselves a little bit more. Is there any advice you would give to parents? I always ask the question, like, what's something you wish people knew? And so that middle school age, I think when the kids are small, it's pretty easy. You just handle it, right? But is there anything you'd like parents of like that middle school, high school age to know about this process and how important it is and how to keep the kids engaged?
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes, especially in the middle school populations, they don't necessarily want to come to their parents about issues they're experiencing. And they might not want to tell a parent, I'm having this going on. And so having the back to school physical once a year, and otherwise, healthy child gives the child an opportunity to ask questions. A lot of times at, kind of adolescent visits, we'll have, mom, dad, parent, guardian step out and have a nurse chaperone come in and ask the child, is there anything you don't feel comfortable sharing? Is there any questions that you have for us? And then kind of going back to, the importance of being established with the provider. If I'm seeing that child for the first time, they might not feel comfortable opening up to me.
Right.
But if I've been seeing them every year for the last 5 years, they're much more likely to ask questions or, bring up healthcare concerns.
Right. And I think that's one thing that, as a parent, it can be hard to kind of like let go of those reins a little bit, but it's really the best thing that can happen, right? Like, the kids have got to be comfortable. Ultimately, as parents, our job is to raise a fully functional adult by somewhere around 18-ish, right? And so healthcare is obviously a huge thing that they have to learn how to handle. And, let's be real, there's certain things you don't want to talk to your parents about. But if you as a parent can set the stage for them to feel comfortable talking with the right people, they're going to do that instead of, because we all know they're going to Google stuff. Like, I mean, the number of things that Wyatt's Googled and like has, ideas on, and it's like, oh, got it, okay. But the fact that he can then ask you guys about that, if he didn't feel comfortable with us, is a huge, huge thing. Is there anything that you've seen work well for parents to like help them kind of like feel comfortable letting go of those reins a little bit?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just emphasizing that, here to support them in any way with healthcare questions. And then, like I said, most parents are pretty good about if we ask, like, hey, will you step out while we talk with your child? Like I said, it's not to inquire about anything, or it's just to give the child an opportunity to maybe bring something up that they wouldn't feel comfortable sharing in front of, parents, guardian, or a sibling that's in the room as well.
Right. And, the other thing is, realistically, if there is something there, as a parent, you're gonna find out about it anyway, right? Because they're gonna need extra, but it helps kind of like break the ice, right? Like, you know, one thing that we often talked about in some of my past experiences is nurses and physicians as partners, not, you know, like, and so there would be a lot of times I can imagine for a kid, it'd be great having like a nurse sitting there next to them, or even you, to break the news to the parent. Like maybe they cut their toenail too deep and they've got an ingrown toenail they don't want to tell anybody about. The toe bro guy's on all the time, so I didn't see that yet. But you know, having that other person sitting there to just kind of like be a buffer, be like, you know, maybe parent told them 100 times not to do that, and they don't want to get the, well, I told you 100 times not to do that. Look where we are, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the biggest thing is being a good role model as a parent to show like, look, this is somebody else you can trust, and then I think that can also help them when they do have new providers to understand that it's not just that individual person that you can trust, it's the person in that role, right? Because, you know, nurses change, doctors change, but if you get comfortable with the fact that all of you have that same overarching goal of we want you to be healthy and not have problems, that's what we need to do. So is there anything else you can think of that you'd really like people to know about, like how important this back to school function is?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we were kind of talking about the difference between a sports physical and, you know, back to school physical, and you know, one of the other big differences is with the back to school physical, they're also looking at making sure you're meeting your age appropriate developmental milestones.
Oh, right.
That's one of the big differences, and obviously intervening early on if there is an issue is you know, has much better outcomes, and so I really can't you know, stress the importance enough of, you know, establishing with a provider, you know, getting your children in, and so that things can be detected early if necessary.
Right, because then if they're like on the short side, you guys can get the racks ready so you can get the stretching going. Because I mean, you know, you got to order the right size stretchers and all that stuff to get them up to the right height, right?
Yeah, of course.
That's still a thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not a thing.
No.
It's not a thing. So the other thing that we often talk about is like that first step, right? You know, maybe you forgot to do it last year. Maybe you know, and like there's some parental shame there or whatever. Just get over it. Like, don't worry about it. The nice thing is you can actually like schedule your appointments online. I actually, in the Facebook and YouTube posts, if you're watching on those platforms, the link to schedule an appointment is like literally right there. You can pop in, put your info in, you can schedule. There's really no barriers to getting that going. Call out to the clinic. It's easy. Is there anything else you can say about how easy it is? I don't think there's really. It's easy.
Yeah, no, kind of like you were saying though, with it already being, you know, midway through June, the summer will be over here quick. So trying to, you know, get in before the school year starts. And
yes, yeah, so do they have to? I assume they have to have that before they register, probably.
Yeah, so it depends.
Like if they're coming in from like another district or something, how does that work? I don't even know.
Yeah, it depends on like different schools and requirements, but like other things, like when you're in 7th grade, you have to be up to date on certain vaccinations as a state requirement, and so that's another reason to try to, you know, get it updated before the school year starts. But if you don't get it in before then, you know, we do them often all throughout the fall and even into the winter.
Gotcha.
But yeah, there's a lot of you know, easy and convenient ways to schedule online, and can schedule through UnityPoint.org.
And I assume these appointments don't take that long, right?
Correct. Yeah, they typically are pretty straightforward. You know, there's a lot of, sometimes they can be a little time consuming just because we'll do like a basic eye exam. You know, we'll do the height, weight, you know, blood pressure checks. You know, depending on the age of the child, there's kind of some screening forms that they'll fill out. You know, does your child, you know, are they able to do certain things?
Right.
And then we review all those, and so sometimes that can take just a little bit of time, but they're pretty quick and easy overall.
Well, now I'm not going to put any pressure on you, but the last time we were here for Wyatt's, they actually had us for his well check. They had us in and out before his appointment time.
Yeah.
Can you do that?
Yeah.
Because Jenny was on it.
Yeah.
That
It just depends on the day.
depends on the day.
Yeah.
No, but and that's the other nice thing is like the way you guys have check-in going now. Like you get it when you have my chart and all that other stuff. You get a text message. You can like virtually check in beforehand. So the whole process, like that time from the time you walk in to the time you leave, has, like from when I was a kid, it's shrunk so much, and it's so much more effective, and it makes it more pleasant, right? Like you don't sit there and go, oh no, I'm gonna wait all day, right? That's not a thing anymore. So, and that's again a nice thing about UnityPoint is you've got enough clinics here in town, and there's enough capacity that you can do that sort of stuff. Is there anything else? I mean, man, back to school is a little more than I thought it was. Thank you, Melissa. I'm going to say thank you right now for handling all that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot that's kind of packed into a pretty quick and efficient visit that may otherwise go unnoticed.
Yeah, and then and again, it will set the table for anything else that you may have to fight in the future, right? And or if there's something emergent like a broken bone or something, at least everything's there. It's all in the system and ready to go. So. Don't forget, folks, I will plug these things every day until the end of time. These things, these warmies, this is the third different one I've seen since we've been here, fourth maybe, I don't know. They are so soft, so cuddly, they make great gifts. Come out, support the auxiliary Friends of UnityPoint, like I don't remember exactly which organization handles it, but it's the hospital, right? And get one of these, give them as a gift. Every kid should have one of these. They are super awesome at, like, we used something kind of similar with our daughter where, you know, the warmth, they can kind of cuddle with it. It just sort of makes everything life good. So come out and get one of those. Yeah. Holy cow, that's pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty easy. Well, I think, folks, that's going to do it for Wellness Wednesday out here at UnityPoint this morning. We'll be out at the Muscatine School District building on Mulberry, kind of out just before you get to Mulberry School on Mulberry. We need a couple more mulberries there for Dr. Saga's, I believe it's second to last dementia presentation tonight at 5:30. And again, that'll be live on discovermuscatine.com, our YouTube, our Facebook, PCTV Channel 3. Pretty much everywhere we'll have it back. You can watch some of the previous ones beforehand. So, and you can go to discovermuscatine.com and like right up on the top bar, it says dementia prevention. You can see all the past presentations there. So thank you for stopping by to chat with us, Matt. It was fun, easy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we'll do it again next month, and we'll see you tonight for Dr. Saga. Have a good day, Miss.